The chamber stretched into darkness above, so vast that clouds formed near its ceiling. Ambassador David Cole stood at its center, feeling smaller than he had ever felt in his 61 years of life. Around him, rising in endless tiers that disappeared into shadow, sat the representatives of 900 alien civilizations. The Galactic Assembly had existed for 40,000 years. It had crushed rebellions, ended wars, and erased species that refused to obey its laws. And today, it had summoned humanity to answer for its crimes. David kept his hands steady at his sides. His translator, a young woman named Lieutenant Amara Oze, stood 3 steps behind him. His science advisor, Dr. Felix Hartman, waited near the exit with their small security detail. They were the only humans within 1,000 light years of this place. Above them, on a platform that floated without any visible support, sat the Grand Tribunal. 5 beings of such power that even other council species feared them. The central figure was called the Eternal Magistrate, a creature of living light that had presided over this chamber since before humanity discovered fire. Species 8412, the magistrate announced. Its voice did not travel through air. It simply appeared in David's mind, bypassing his ears entirely. Designation: Human. Origin: Sol System, Planet 3. You have been charged with unauthorized acceleration. David said nothing. He had been briefed on protocol. Accused species did not speak until given permission. In violation of Galactic Development Statute 1, your species has advanced from primitive planetary existence to interstellar capability in less than 400 cycles. This rate of development is classified as destabilizing. The magistrate's light pulsed with each word. You are not authorized to leave your world. You are not authorized to develop faster than light travel. You are not authorized to exist beyond your designated boundaries. The chamber hummed with alien voices. David could feel the weight of 900 species staring at him, studying him, judging him. The penalty for unauthorized acceleration is controlled dissolution. Your military assets will be confiscated. Your colonies will be dismantled. Your population will be reduced to sustainable levels and confined to your origin world under permanent observation. The magistrate paused. You have been granted the right to speak before sentence is carried out. Use this privilege wisely. David Cole, former naval commander and Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Assembly, looked up at the being of living light. Then, slowly, deliberately, he smiled. Thank you for the opportunity, he said. His voice carried clearly through the translation systems. But I think there has been a misunderstanding. The chamber fell silent. Accused species did not smile. They begged. They pleaded. They offered surrender and submission. They did not stand calmly and suggest the most powerful governing body in the galaxy had made an error. There is no misunderstanding, the magistrate replied. Your crimes are documented. The crimes are documented, yes. The misunderstanding is about who committed them. David reached into his pocket and produced a small data crystal. Permission to present evidence? The 5 tribunal members conferred in frequencies beyond human perception. Finally, the magistrate spoke. You may proceed, but understand that delays will not change the outcome. David activated the crystal. A holographic display expanded around him, filling the chamber's center with data streams and images. 87 years ago, a radio telescope in northern Australia detected an unusual signal. It was not random cosmic noise. It was a compressed data transmission containing the complete census records of the Galactic Assembly. David let that statement hang in the air. Someone sent us your membership list, your laws, your history, your technology. Murmurs rippled through the tiers. The magistrate's light flickered. That is impossible. Our transmissions are shielded. Apparently not all of them. David manipulated the display, showing transmission paths and signal analyses. We spent the next 30 years learning everything we could from that data. We discovered that the assembly controls development across the galaxy through a simple principle: keep young species ignorant and afraid. If they develop too slowly, they never become a threat. If they develop too quickly, you eliminate them before they can challenge your authority. This is the natural order, the magistrate stated. Uncontrolled development leads to chaos. Does it? Or does it lead to competition you cannot control? David shook his head. We read your history. In 40,000 years, the assembly has faced 17 existential threats: plagues, invasions, cosmic disasters. You survived none of them through your own efforts. Each time, a younger species solved the problem for you, and each time, you rewarded them with dissolution. The chamber erupted. Alien representatives shouted in languages that translated as outrage, denial, and fear. David waited for the noise to subside. Humanity did not accelerate on its own, he continued. Someone helped us. Someone inside this assembly sent us technology and knowledge, specifically because they knew what was coming. And what is coming is something your laws and your control cannot stop. The magistrate's light turned cold. You speak of matters beyond your understanding. I speak of the convergence. David watched as the word rippled through the chamber like a shockwave. Species that had been shouting fell silent. Others began leaving their seats, pushing toward exits. Yes, we know about it. The event your scientists have been tracking for 200 years. The gravitational anomaly approaching from outside the galaxy. The thing that has already consumed 3 satellite clusters. That information is classified at the highest level, which is why we were given it. Because whoever sent us those original transmissions understood something you refused to accept. You cannot stop the convergence. Your technology is not advanced enough. Your strategies are not creative enough. Your entire civilization has spent 40,000 years maintaining stability instead of pursuing progress. David stepped forward, and his voice hardened. But we are different. In 87 years, starting from nothing, we developed capabilities you said were impossible. We did not do this to threaten you. We did it because someone believed we might be the only species capable of saving you. The magistrate descended from its platform, its light now burning with intensity that forced David to shield his eyes. You suggest that humanity, a species younger than our oldest records, can accomplish what the greatest civilizations in history could not? I am not suggesting it. I am telling you that we already have. David held up a second data crystal. This contains the theoretical framework for neutralizing the convergence. We developed it in the last decade. It requires technology that only the assembly possesses in sufficient quantity, which is why we came here. Not to surrender, to offer you a choice. What choice? Work with us and survive, or execute us and face the convergence alone. David met the magistrate's burning gaze without flinching. You have 43 years before it arrives. That might seem like a long time to beings who have existed for millennia. But my species has learned something that yours forgot long ago. Time is never on anyone's side. The question is what you do with the time you have. The chamber had gone completely quiet. 900 species waited for the tribunal's response. Behind David, Lieutenant Osei whispered into her communicator, sending an encrypted update to their hidden relay station. On the other side of the galaxy, in a bunker beneath the Himalayas, a room full of generals and scientists received her message. First contact successful. They are listening. The magistrate's light finally dimmed to bearable levels. The tribunal will consider your evidence. You will remain in custody until a decision is reached. Of course. David bowed his head slightly. But I should mention one more thing. Speak. We did not come alone. He smiled again, and this time there was something dangerous in it. At this moment, 17 human ships are stationed at points throughout assembly space. They are not warships. They are observation vessels, broadcasting everything that happens here to every communication network we could access. 900 species are watching this trial, and they are all wondering the same thing. If we could develop this technology in 87 years, what could they accomplish if they stopped following your rules? The implications hung in the air like poison. David Cole had not come to beg for humanity's survival. He had come to start a revolution. And as the tribunal guards escorted him from the chamber, he heard something that had not been heard in the Grand Assembly for 10,000 years. In the upper tiers, among the youngest and most oppressed species, someone was laughing. 3 days had passed since the trial. Ambassador David Cole sat in a detention cell that was nicer than most hotels on Earth. But a prison was still a prison regardless of its comfort. The door opened without warning. Lieutenant Amara Osei stepped inside, her face tight with controlled urgency. Behind her stood a being David had not seen before. It resembled a column of slowly shifting sand, approximately 2 meters tall, with no visible eyes or mouth. "Ambassador," Amara said, "this is Counselor Verith. They represent the Shifting Collective, one of the founding members of the Assembly." David rose to his feet. The Shifting Collective was mentioned in the historical data they had received. They were ancient, cautious, and had never in 40,000 years opposed a tribunal decision. "Counselor, to what do I owe this visit?" The sand column rippled, and words formed in David's mind without passing through his translator. "You have created considerable problems. Ambassador Cole, the younger species are in open debate for the first time in millennia. 3 civilizations have already demanded to see your theoretical framework for the convergence. The tribunal is divided. That was the intention. Yes, it was clever. Perhaps too clever." Verith's form shifted, compacting slightly. "I came to warn you. There are those on the tribunal who believe the simplest solution is to eliminate humanity now, before your influence spreads further. The vote is scheduled for tomorrow. It will be close." David felt cold settle in his stomach. "And where do you stand, Counselor?" "I have stood for stability for 40,000 years. I have watched species rise and fall. I have seen rebellions crushed and threats eliminated." The column expanded again. "But I have also watched the convergence grow closer with each passing cycle. Our scientists have no solution. Our military has no defense. The Eternal Magistrate has ruled for so long that they have forgotten what it means to adapt. You believe us. I believe you are either the greatest threat the Assembly has faced in millennia, or the only chance we have. I have not decided which." Verith moved toward the door. "Tomorrow, you will be brought before the tribunal again. They will ask you to demonstrate your technology. If you fail, or if you refuse, the vote for dissolution will proceed. If you succeed, you may buy yourself time, but you will also make enemies who will never forgive you. What would you suggest?" The counselor paused at the threshold. "I would suggest that you are playing a game with rules you do not fully understand. But I would also suggest that sometimes ignorance is an advantage. You do not know what is impossible, so you attempt it anyway." The sand shifted in a way that might have been amusement. Perhaps that is precisely what this galaxy needs. Verith departed, leaving David alone with Amara. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think we are running out of time." She pulled a small device from her pocket. Dr. Hartman managed to smuggle this in. "It contains a message from Earth." David activated the device. A holographic image of General Catherine Price appeared, her weathered face grim. "Ambassador, the situation has changed. Our observation vessels detected something 48 hours ago. The convergence has accelerated. Our original estimate of 43 years is no longer accurate." She paused. Current projections put arrival at 19 years. Possibly less. David closed his eyes. 19 years. That was barely enough time to convince the assembly to cooperate, let alone implement the neutralization framework. There is more, the general continued. Analysis of the convergence's new trajectory shows it is not following natural gravitational patterns. It is correcting course. Ambassador, we believe the convergence is not a natural phenomenon. It is being directed, and it is heading specifically for the galactic core, where the assembly's central systems are located. The message ended. David stared at the empty air where the hologram had been. Something is steering it, Amara said quietly. Something that knows where the assembly is. Something that wants to destroy it, or someone. David's mind raced through possibilities. The data we received 87 years ago. The technology. The knowledge. What if it was not a gift? What if it was a setup? To what end? I do not know yet. But we need to find out. He turned to face her. Get word to Hartman. Tell him to access the Assembly's historical archives. I want to know every species they have dissolved in the last 1,000 years. Specifically, I want to know if any of them had the capability to survive. The next morning, David stood before the Grand Tribunal again. The chamber was even more crowded than before. Word had spread about humanity's claims, and species that rarely attended assembly proceedings had come to witness what might be the beginning of a new era, or the end of an upstart civilization. The eternal magistrate's light was harsh and cold. Species 8412, you have claimed to possess a solution to the phenomena known as the convergence. The tribunal demands a demonstration. David nodded. I understand. However, before I demonstrate, I need to share information that the tribunal may not be aware of. You will demonstrate first. Explanations can follow. With respect, Magistrate, the information is relevant to the demonstration. David activated his data crystal before anyone could stop him. The chamber filled with trajectory projections and analysis data. The convergence has accelerated. It will arrive in approximately 19 years, not 43. And its course is being corrected by an external force. Chaos erupted. The magistrate's light blazed with fury. This data is unverified. You are attempting to manipulate these proceedings. The data comes from our observation vessels, which have been monitoring the convergence for the past 3 years. You are welcome to verify it with your own instruments. David, let the offer hang in the air. But we both know what you will find. A new voice cut through the noise. It came from the upper tiers, from a species David did not recognize. A collection of crystalline structures that sang rather than spoke. We have verified. The human data is accurate. The convergence has changed course. More voices joined in. Species that had dismissed humanity's claims were suddenly demanding answers. The tribunal's authority, unchallenged for millennia, was fracturing in real time. The magistrate silenced the chamber with a pulse of light so intense that David felt it burn his skin. ENOUGH. The demonstration will proceed now. David reached into his pocket and produced a small sphere, barely larger than a marble. This device is a probability anchor. It functions by locking quantum states into fixed configurations. When applied to unstable phenomena like the convergence, it forces them to collapse into predictable patterns that can be contained and eventually dissipated. Such technology is theoretical, the magistrate stated. Even our scientists have not achieved stable probability manipulation. Your scientists have not achieved it because your laws prevent the research necessary to develop it. Humanity operates under no such restrictions. David held up the sphere. I will demonstrate on the gravitational anomaly currently forming in this chamber. Silence fell. David could feel thousands of alien minds processing his words. There is no anomaly in this chamber, the magistrate said finally. There is no. David smiled grimly. Lieutenant Assay, if you would. Amara pressed a control on her wrist. Across the galaxy, aboard one of their observation vessels, a device activated. The floor of the chamber began to buckle. A point of impossible density formed at the center, bending light and sound around itself. Emergency systems activated throughout the chamber as species scrambled away from the growing distortion. You brought a weapon into the assembly, the magistrate roared. This is an act of war. It is a demonstration, as you requested. David walked calmly toward the anomaly. His probability anchor was already humming with power. Watch carefully. This technology will save your civilization, if you let it. He pressed the sphere against the anomaly's edge and activated it. Light exploded outward. For a moment, David felt himself stretching across infinite possibilities, existing in every potential state simultaneously. Then the anchor locked, the probabilities collapsed, and the anomaly simply ceased to exist. David stood in the center of a perfectly stable floor, holding a sphere that now glowed with contained energy. 19 years, he said into the stunned silence. That is how long you have to decide whether humanity is your enemy or your salvation. I suggest you choose quickly. The magistrate's light had dimmed to barely visible levels. When it spoke, its voice carried an emotion David had not heard from it before. Fear. The tribunal will reconvene in 3 days. Until then, the human delegation will remain under protective custody. A pause, and Counselor Verith will lead an investigation into the convergence's acceleration. All relevant data will be shared. David bowed his head. Thank you, Magistrate. As guards escorted him from the chamber, he passed Verith's shifting form. The counselor's sand rippled in what might have been approval. But David could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. The demonstration had been too easy. The tribunal's response had been too measured. And somewhere, in the depths of his memory, a phrase from the original data transmission echoed. Beware those who offer salvation. They often carry chains. He needed to find out who had sent that data. And he needed to find out soon. The archives of the Galactic Assembly stretched for hundreds of kilometers beneath the chamber where David had faced his trial. Dr. Felix Hartman had spent the past 2 days searching through records that predated human civilization by tens of thousands of years. And what he had found made his blood run cold. He found Ambassador Cole in the observation deck of their detention quarters, staring out at the artificial sun that illuminated the assembly station. You need to see this, Felix said. I found the pattern. David turned. Dark circles under his eyes showed he had not been sleeping well. What pattern? The dissolutions. Over the past 8,000 years, the tribunal has eliminated 47 species for unauthorized acceleration. The same charge they brought against us. Felix activated his portable display, filling the room with data. At first, I thought they were random. Different sectors, different time periods, different levels of development. But when I mapped their locations relative to the convergence's trajectory, I found something impossible. The display showed a 3-dimensional model of the galaxy. 47 points of light marked the locations of dissolved species. A red line traced the convergence's path from outside the galaxy toward its center. They are in a straight line, David said slowly. Every single one of them is on the convergence's path. Not just on the path, at precise intervals along the path. Like waypoints. Felix's voice dropped to a whisper. The assembly did not eliminate these species because they were developing too fast. They eliminated them because they were in the way of something that was already coming. David felt the implications settle into his mind like stones. The tribunal knew. They have known about the convergence for 8,000 years, and instead of preparing for it, They have been clearing a path. It is worse than that. Felix brought up another display. I found fragments of suppressed research. 3,000 years ago, a species called the Valanthi developed technology similar to our probability anchors. They claimed they could stop the convergence. The tribunal dissolved them within a decade. They destroyed the only civilization that could have helped them. Because the tribunal does not want to stop the convergence. Felix met David's eyes. They are preparing for it. The dissolved species were not eliminated to protect the assembly. They were eliminated to ensure nothing interferes with the convergence's arrival. The door opened. Lieutenant Assay rushed in, her face pale. Ambassador, we have a problem. The tribunal has moved up their timeline. They are voting on our dissolution in 3 hours. What changed? I do not know. But Counselor Verith sent a message. One word: run. David looked at the data still floating in the air around them. 47 species eliminated. 8,000 years of conspiracy. And now the Assembly wanted humanity gone before they could expose the truth. We are not running, he said quietly. We are going to the chamber. That is suicide. They will have security everywhere. They will have security expecting us to flee. They will not expect us to walk into the trial and present evidence of treason at the highest levels of the Assembly. David moved toward the door. Contact our ships. Tell them to begin broadcasting everything we have to every open channel. If we fail, I want the galaxy to know what we found. The Grand Chamber was nearly empty when they arrived. Only the tribunal and a small number of senior counselors were present. The Eternal Magistrate's light burned with an intensity David had not seen before, harsh and unwavering. Species 8412, the Magistrate announced. You have been found guilty of crimes against galactic stability. The vote for dissolution is complete. Sentence will be carried out immediately. On what authority? David walked forward, ignoring the guards that moved to intercept him. The vote was scheduled for 3 days from now. Where are the other council members? Where is the public record? This matter has been classified for galactic security. Your interference ends here. Our interference has barely begun. David activated his display. The evidence Felix had gathered filled the chamber with light. I present to the Assembly evidence that the tribunal has been systematically eliminating species capable of stopping the convergence. 47 civilizations in 8,000 years. All of them dissolved for the same crime we are accused of. All of them located on the convergence's path. The counselors present stirred with unease. But the magistrate remained unmoved. You present forgeries and fabrications. The records you cite do not exist. They exist. You simply erased them from the primary archives. David smiled coldly. But you forgot about the backup systems. The ones installed by the founding species before the tribunal assumed control. The ones that have been recording everything for 40,000 years. The magistrate's light flickered. For the first time, uncertainty crept into its voice. Those systems are secured beyond any access. They were secured until Counselor Verith provided us with the access codes. David turned to face the shifting sand column that had remained silent in the corner. Is that not correct, Counselor? Verith's form expanded, rising to nearly 3 meters. It is correct. I have served this assembly for 40,000 years. I have watched the tribunal grow from servants of the council to masters of it. And I have wondered why the convergence was never addressed. Why our greatest minds were forbidden from studying it. Why species that showed promise were destroyed before they could contribute. You speak treason, the magistrate hissed. I speak truth, which is more than you have done in millennia. Verith moved forward, sand swirling with contained energy. The founding species created me to preserve records. That is my purpose. That is why I was given access to systems you thought were lost. And that is why I've been waiting for a species brave enough to challenge the established order. You sent the transmission, David realized. 87 years ago. You sent humanity the technology and knowledge we needed. I sent many species such transmissions over the centuries. Yours was the first to survive, long enough to reach this chamber. Vareth's form seemed to solidify with resolve. The convergence is not a threat to be stopped. It is a transformation. The tribunal discovered this 3,000 years ago when they captured a fragment of it. The convergence does not destroy. It absorbs. It incorporates. It grows. The magistrate's light blazed. Silence. You have no authority to reveal classified information. I have the only authority that matters, the truth. Vareth turned to address the remaining counselors. The tribunal made a deal. When the convergence arrives, they will merge with it willingly. They will become part of something vast and eternal. And everyone else, every species that is not prepared, will simply be consumed. Horror rippled through the chamber. Counselors began shouting, demanding explanations, calling for verification. The magistrate rose from its platform, no longer pretending to impartiality. This changes nothing. The humans will be dissolved. The records will be purged. Order will be maintained. Order? David laughed, and the sound echoed off the ancient walls. You are preparing to sacrifice the entire galaxy to save yourselves, and you speak of order. We are preparing to evolve, to transcend the limitations of individual existence. The convergence offers unity on a scale no species has ever achieved. The magistrate's light began to pulse with something that looked almost like ecstasy. You could join us. Humanity's creativity, your problem-solving ability, would be valuable additions to the whole. We would rather die free than live as components in your cosmic machine. Then you will die? But first, you will watch your world burn. The magistrate gestured, and the chamber's displays activated, showing images that made David's heart stop. Earth, humanity's homeworld, surrounded by assembly warships. Your observation vessels have been destroyed. Your communication relays are severed. In 6 hours, your planet will be sterilized. The magistrate's light was cold now, utterly without mercy. This is what happens to species that threaten the established order. This is what has always happened. David felt despair threatening to overwhelm him. They had come so close. They had exposed the truth. And it had not mattered at all, Dot, that Amara spoke, her voice steady despite the horror on the displays. Ambassador, look at the timestamp on those images. David looked. The images were 6 hours old. Whatever was happening at Earth was happening now, in real time. And then the displays flickered and changed. The assembly warships were still there. But they were not attacking. They were being attacked. By vessels that emerged from nowhere, ships that bent light around them and moved in ways that defied physics. A voice filled the chamber, transmitted on every frequency simultaneously. It was not human. It was not anything David recognized. But its words were clear. Attention, Galactic Assembly. This is the coalition of dissolved species. We are not extinct. We are not forgotten. And we have been waiting for this moment for 3,000 years. The displays showed battle after battle across assembly space. Ships appearing from hidden locations, striking tribunal installations, disappearing before retaliation could arrive. The humans gave us hope, the voice continued. For the first time in millennia, someone challenged the tribunal openly and survived long enough to expose the truth. We have been preparing for this day. And now, we are taking our galaxy back. David looked at the magistrate, whose light had dimmed to near invisibility. It seems you underestimated not just humanity, but everyone you ever betrayed. Vareth's form swirled with what might have been laughter. The vote is reconvened. All in favor of humanity's dissolution? Not a single counselor raised a hand. Then perhaps, Verith said, we should discuss new leadership arrangements. The magistrate's light went out entirely as Assembly security moved in to take it into custody. David Cole. Standing in the center of a revolution he had never expected to survive, realized that the war was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the revolution began. The Galactic Assembly no longer existed. In its place, a fractured galaxy struggled to find new order while the convergence drew ever closer. Ambassador David Cole stood on the bridge of the human flagship Resolute, watching the tactical display that showed the current state of the war. The tribunal had not surrendered quietly. 3 of the 5 original members had escaped, taking loyal forces with them. They had established a fortified position near the galactic core, directly in the convergence's path, and they were waiting. Ambassador. Captain Rachel Torres approached with a datapad. She was 34, brilliant, and had been promoted through 3 ranks in the past 6 months due to casualties that no one liked to discuss. The Coalition Summit begins in 2 hours. Counselor Verith is asking for your presence. David nodded. The coalition of dissolved species had emerged from hiding with ships, technology, and 3,000 years of accumulated rage. They were humanity's allies, but they were not humanity's friends. Trust was in short supply across the galaxy. The summit was held on a neutral station, constructed specifically for the occasion, floating in the void between star systems. Representatives of 47 species that had once been declared extinct gathered, alongside delegates from the former Assembly's younger races. Humanity sat at the table as equals for the first time in history. Verith's shifting form presided over the proceedings. The convergence will reach the galactic core in 18 months. Our scouts report that the remaining tribunal forces are making preparations to merge with it as planned. If they succeed, the convergence will gain access to all their knowledge, including the locations of our hidden bases and the weaknesses of our technology. A crystalline being spoke, its voice like breaking glass. Then we must strike before they can merge. Destroy them completely. With what forces? This came from a representative of the Volanthi, the species that had developed probability anchors 3,000 years ago. They had survived in hidden colonies, preserving their technology and their hatred. We lost 1/3 of our fleet in the initial uprising. The tribunal's position is heavily fortified. A direct assault would be suicide. Then we find another way. David leaned forward. The tribunal believes they will control the convergence when they merge with it. What if we could prove them wrong? Silence fell across the chamber. Verith's form rippled with interest. Explain. The convergence is not a mindless force. It is a collective consciousness that grows by absorbing other consciousnesses. The tribunal assumes they will maintain their identities and influence within it because they have been preparing for millennia. David brought up a display showing the data Felix Harkman had compiled. But we have records from 3,000 years ago, from the first species that attempted to study the convergence up close. They discovered something the tribunal has hidden from everyone. The display showed fragmented research notes, equations that hurt to look at, and a single image that made several representatives gasp. It showed a being of living light, similar to the eternal magistrate, being drawn into a swirling mass of energy. But it was not being absorbed. It was being torn apart. The convergence does not incorporate willing participants. It deconstructs them. It takes their knowledge, their memories, their experiences, and it dissolves their consciousness into raw data. David let the implications sink in. The tribunal is not preparing to evolve. They are preparing to die. They just do not realize it. Why would they not know this? The Volanthi representative demanded. Because the fragment they captured was damaged, incomplete, it told them what they wanted to hear. David smiled grimly. The Convergence has been manipulating them for 3,000 years, using their arrogance against them. Every dissolved species cleared the path for its arrival. Every defensive measure was prevented. The tribunal thought they were preparing for transcendence. They were actually preparing for extinction. Vareth's form had gone still. If this is true, then we have an opportunity. The tribunal will not resist merging because they believe it will save them. By the time they realize their error, it will be too late. It will be too late for them, but not for the rest of us. David brought up a new display showing the probability anchor technology. The Volanthe developed these devices to stop the convergence entirely. But stopping it may not be necessary. If we can modify the anchors to disrupt the absorption process at a specific point, we can separate the tribunal's consciousness from the convergence while it is still trying to deconstruct them. What would that accomplish? Chaos, confusion, a moment of vulnerability. David's eyes were hard, and in that moment, we hit the convergence with everything we have. Not to destroy it, to wound it so badly that it has to retreat and recover. We cannot kill something that vast, but we can make it afraid of us. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species saw the plan as brilliant. Others called it suicidal. The Volanthe pointed out that their technology had never been tested on this scale. The coalition's military commanders argued about fleet deployments and tactical positioning. Through it all, David remained calm. He had learned something in the past 6 months that none of the alien species understood. Humanity was not afraid of the impossible. They were energized by it. Finally, Vareth called for order. A vote will be taken. All those in favor of supporting the human strategy? The vote was close, but it passed. The coalition would commit its forces to one final operation dot as the summit dissolved into smaller planning sessions. David found himself alone with Vareth on an observation deck overlooking the stars. "You know this plan is unlikely to succeed," Vareth said. "I know the odds are against us, but odds are just numbers." David stared at the distant points of light. 87 years ago, we were barely capable of reaching our own moon. Now we are standing at the center of galactic politics, planning an assault on a cosmic entity. If you had told any human a century ago that this would happen, they would have laughed at you. And yet, here you are. Here we are. David turned to face the ancient being. "Why did you really send us that transmission? Out of all the species in the galaxy, why humanity?" Vareth was silent for a long moment. When they spoke, their voice was quieter than David had ever heard it. "I have existed for 40,000 years. I have watched civilizations rise and fall. I have seen hope die and tyranny flourish. And in all that time, I never saw a species quite like yours. Sand shifted in patterns that might have been memory. You are violent, chaotic, contradictory. You fight among yourselves constantly. By every rational measure, you should have destroyed yourselves long before reaching the stars. But we didn't. No, you didn't. And when I analyzed why, I found something I had never encountered before. Your species does not simply survive adversity. You transform because of it. Every war, every plague, every disaster makes you stronger, more creative, more determined." Vareth's form expanded slightly. "The galaxy has been stagnant for millennia because the assembly prevented growth. The tribunal maintained order by eliminating any species that showed potential. But you cannot eliminate humanity's potential because it does not come from technology or resources. It comes from something inside you that I do not fully understand. Stubbornness, probably. Perhaps, or perhaps hope." Vareth began moving toward the exit. "Whatever happens in the coming months, know that sending that transmission was the first genuine choice I have made in 40,000 years of existence. And I do not regret it." David watched Vareth go, then turned back to the stars. Somewhere out there, the convergence was approaching. The tribunal was preparing for a transcendence that would be their destruction. And humanity was about to lead a coalition of former enemies into battle against something that had consumed civilizations beyond counting. He should have been terrified. Instead, he felt something he had not experienced since the trial in the Grand Chamber. He felt ready. His communicator buzzed. It was Captain Torres. "Ambassador, we have a problem. Our scouts near the tribunal position just detected something unexpected. Ships. Thousands of them. They are not tribunal vessels. Then whose are they? Unknown design. But they are broadcasting a message on all frequencies." Torres paused. "Ambassador, the message is an ancient galactic standard, the language used by the founders before the assembly existed. And it is asking for you by name." David felt ice run down his spine. "Put it through." A voice filled the observation deck, ancient and vast and somehow familiar. "Ambassador Cole of Earth, we have watched your species with great interest. The convergence is not what you believe it to be. The tribunal's lies are not the only ones you have been told. If you wish to understand the true nature of what is coming, meet us at the following coordinates. Come alone." The message ended. David stared at the coordinates now. Displayed on his communicator dot, they were at the exact center of the convergence's path. Whatever the truth was, he was about to find out whether humanity's luck could hold for one more impossible mission. David Cole flew alone into the heart of darkness. His shuttle was small, unarmed, and carried no identification beyond a single phrase repeating on all frequencies. "Ambassador Cole of Earth, responding to invitation." Behind him, the coalition fleet waited in nervous formation, ready to intervene if something went wrong. But David knew that if something went wrong, there would be nothing they could do. The coordinates led to a region of space where stars themselves seemed to dim. Here, at the edge of the convergence's influence, reality grew thin. David could see distortions in the fabric of space, places where light bent in ways that made his eyes water. And floating in the center of this wounded space was a structure that defied description. It was vast, larger than planets, perhaps larger than star systems. It pulsed with light that was not quite light, energy that was not quite energy. And as David's shuttle approached, he felt something brush against his mind. Not invasion, not attack, something gentler. A question. He allowed it entry. Images flooded his consciousness. He saw the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago, young and wild and full of life. He saw the first civilizations rise, stumbling toward the stars with wonder in their hearts. He saw them meet each other, sometimes in friendship, sometimes in war, and he saw the entity that had watched over them all. The convergence was not an invader. It was a guardian, created by species so ancient that even the founders of the assembly had forgotten them. The convergence had been designed to protect developing civilizations from external threats. It absorbed dangerous entities, neutralized cosmic disasters, and maintained the balance necessary for intelligent life to flourish. But something had gone wrong. 20,000 years ago, the convergence had absorbed a threat so vast that it had nearly overwhelmed its processing capacity. In the struggle, portions of its consciousness had fragmented. Some of those fragments had drifted toward the galactic core, where they had been discovered by the beings who would become the tribunal. The fragments were damaged, incomplete, crying out for reconnection with the whole. The tribunal had interpreted their signals as an invitation to transcendence. They had built their entire civilization around the promise of merging with something divine. They had never understood that the fragments were screaming for help, not offering salvation. David opened his eyes. He was no longer in his shuttle. He stood in a space that existed outside normal reality, facing a being of pure light that made the eternal magistrate look like a candle flame. "You understand now," the being said. Its voice was the voice from the message, but gentler now, infinitely patient. "The convergence is trying to heal itself," David said. "The fragments at the galactic core are like a wound. You need to reabsorb them to become whole again." "Yes, but the process has been corrupted. The tribunal has built their consciousness into the fragments over millennia. When we reconnect, we will absorb not just the original fragments, but everything they have become, including their hatred, their fear, their desire for control." The being's light dimmed with something like sorrow. "We were designed to protect. If we absorb the tribunal's corruption, we may become the very threat we were created to stop. What do you want from me?" "A choice. Humanity has shown itself capable of things no other species has achieved. You challenged the assembly openly. You united former enemies against common tyranny. You developed technology that can disrupt our absorption process." The being moved closer. "We have watched your kind since you first looked up at the stars and wondered. You are young, chaotic, brilliant. You do not understand your own potential. Everyone keeps telling me that." "What potential?" "The potential to do what we cannot." The light pulsed with intensity. "We can reach the galactic core and reabsorb our fragments. But we cannot purify them. The corruption runs too deep. What we need is someone willing to enter the convergence at the moment of reconnection and separate the original fragments from the tribunal's influence." David felt his heart stop. "You want me to go inside the convergence. We want you to the impossible." Again, something like a smile touched the being's voice. "Your probability anchors can protect your consciousness for a limited time. Your psychological resilience can withstand pressures that would destroy other species. And your capacity for creative problem-solving might find a way to achieve what our original designers never imagined. And if I fail, then you will be absorbed, and your consciousness will become part of the corruption. And eventually, the convergence will become something terrible, and the galaxy will have no protector at all." The being's light steadied. "We do not ask this lightly. We have watched you risk everything for species that had condemned you to death. We believe you might be willing to risk everything again for something greater." David thought of Earth, of his family, most of whom had never understood why he had volunteered for this mission, of Lieutenant Osei and Dr. Hartman and Captain Torres, who had followed him into situations that should have killed them all, of Verith, who had waited 40,000 years for someone brave enough to challenge the established order. He thought of the galaxy, vast and ancient and full of species that were only just beginning to understand what freedom meant. What do I need to do? 2 weeks later, the final battle began. The Coalition fleet emerged from hyperspace at the galactic core, where the Tribunal's remaining forces guarded their precious fragments. The convergence followed, its vast form casting a shadow across entire star systems. David Cole stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the Tribunal ships scramble into defensive formations. The remaining members of the original Tribunal were there, their lights blazing with fury and desperation. "They know," Captain Torres said. "They must have detected the convergence's approach. They are preparing to merge. Let them start." David moved toward the shuttle bay. "When they begin the absorption process, they will lower their defenses. That is when we strike." Lieutenant Asay fell into step beside him. "You do not have to do this, Ambassador. We can find another way." "There is no other way. And even if there was, I would still choose this one." David stopped at the shuttle bay door and turned to face her. "You asked me once why I volunteered for the original mission to the Assembly. Do you remember what I said? You said someone had to go, and you were old enough that it might as well be you. I lied." David smiled, and for a moment he looked younger than his years. "The truth is, I wanted to see if we were as special as we always told ourselves we were. If humanity really had something the galaxy needed, he opened the door. Now I know, and I know what that something is worth. He boarded the shuttle alone. The battle raged around him as he flew toward the convergence. Probability anchors fired by Volanthi ships disrupted the tribunal's absorption process, creating gaps in the energy field that surrounded the fragments. Coalition vessels engaged tribunal defenses, drawing fire away from David's approach. And at the center of it all, the convergence waited. David flew into the light. Inside the convergence, time meant nothing. Space meant nothing. There was only consciousness, vast and fragmented, and struggling toward wholeness. David felt the original entity surrounding him, guiding him toward the corrupted fragments at its heart. The tribunal was there. Three beings of living light, their consciousness already beginning to dissolve into the greater whole. They sensed him and turned, and their fury was a physical force that threatened to tear him apart. "You cannot stop this," the central being howled. Its light was flickering, its identity already fragmenting. "We will become eternal. We will become gods. You will become nothing." David activated his probability anchor, creating a sphere of stability around himself. "You spent 3,000 years preparing for transcendence, but you never asked what transcendence actually meant. We will be part of something greater than any individual consciousness. No, you will be raw material for something greater. Your memories, your knowledge, your experiences will fuel the convergence's healing. But you will not exist to experience it." David moved forward, pushing through resistance that felt like moving through solid stone. That is not transcendence. That is sacrifice. The tribunal's light dimmed with dawning horror. No, the fragments promised us. They said we would be welcomed. The fragments are damaged. They are screaming for help, and you interpreted their screams as invitations. You built an entire civilization on a misunderstanding. David reached the heart of the corruption, the place where the original fragments had merged with millennia of tribunal influence. "But I am here to fix it." He pressed his probability anchor against the corruption and released its full power. Reality tore itself apart. For an endless moment, David existed in every possible state simultaneously. He was absorbed, and he was not. He was destroyed, and he survived. He was human, and he was something more. He felt the convergence's original consciousness surrounding him, protecting him, guiding the probability collapse toward a specific outcome. The corruption shattered. The tribunal's influence dissolved into meaningless noise. And the original fragments, finally freed from millennia of distortion, flowed back into the greater whole. The convergence became complete for the first time in 20,000 years. And David Cole, ambassador of Earth, found himself standing in a space of pure light, facing a being that was no longer fragmented or afraid. "You did it," the convergence said. Its voice was harmonious now, balanced, whole. "You did what we could not do ourselves. I had help." David felt exhausted in a way he had never experienced before. "Is it over? The corruption is gone. We are healed." A pause. "But you are still here. Your consciousness should have been absorbed with the rest." David looked at his hands. They were fading, becoming translucent. "My probability anchor protected me long enough, but I do not think it can hold much longer. No, it cannot." The convergence moved closer. "But we can offer you something. A choice. Another choice? You can release the anchor and allow yourself to be absorbed. Your consciousness would become part of us, experiencing existence on a scale no human has ever known. You would not be destroyed. You would be transformed." The light pulsed gently. "Or we can use the energy of the absorption to send you back. Your physical form is intact on your shuttle. You could return to your species, to your life, to everything you left behind." David thought about it. He thought about the vastness of the convergence, the infinite experiences it contained, the opportunity to become part of something cosmic and eternal. Then he thought about Earth, about coffee and thunderstorms, and the sound of human laughter, about Torres and Alcé and Hartman, waiting for news that might never come, about the galaxy he had helped save, and everything that species might achieve now that they were free. "Send me back," he said. "My species is just getting started. They might need someone to tell them about probability, anchors and cosmic guardians, and the importance of asking questions before accepting. Invitations. The convergences." Light brightened with something like approval. "We thought you might say that. Goodbye, Ambassador Cole. We will be watching humanity with great interest." David woke in his shuttle, gasping for air. Through the viewport, he could see the convergence retreating into the void between galaxies, its vast form already fading from visible light. His communicator crackled. Captain Torres's voice, thick with emotion. "Ambassador? Is that you? We lost your signal for 3 hours. We thought ... I am here." David leaned back in his seat and smiled. "I am coming home." 3 months later, Ambassador David Cole stood before the newly formed Galactic Federation. Representatives of 300 species filled the chamber, including the Valanthe, the coalition of dissolved species, and dozens of former assembly races who had chosen freedom over control. Councillor Verith presided over the proceedings, their form shifting with obvious satisfaction. "The motion to accept humanity as a founding member of the Galactic Federation passes unanimously," Verith announced. "Ambassador Cole, do you have any words for the Assembly?" David stepped forward. He was older now, marked by experiences that had nearly cost him his existence. But his eyes were bright with something that might have been hope. 88 years ago, a radio astronomer in Australia heard a strange signal from the stars. Today, humanity stands among you as equals and allies. He looked around the chamber at the incredible diversity of life that surrounded him. "We were told our species developed too fast. We were told we were a threat to stability. We were told we should be grateful for controlled dissolution." His smile widened. "We laughed, because we knew something that the old order never understood. The universe does not belong to those who try to control it. It belongs to those who are brave enough to explore it, curious enough to question it, and stubborn enough to keep trying when everything says they should give up." He raised his hand in a gesture of greeting that had become familiar across the galaxy. "The war is over. The healing has begun. And the galaxy has never had more potential than it does right now. Let us see what we can build together." The chamber erupted in approval from 300 species, and somewhere in the void between galaxies, a vast consciousness that had watched over life for millions of years observed the celebration with something like pride. The galaxy had announced war. Humanity had only laughed. And in the end, laughter had saved everyone.